Back in the magical yesteryear of 2002, it wasn't uncommon for movie producers and game production companies to join forces and cobble together a video game based on whatever big budget Hollywood project was set to take the general public by storm. Die Hard, Batman, RoboCop, and so many other unfortunate summer blockbusters all fell victim to the dreaded movie tie-in game. That's not to say all of them were bad though. Some managed to surprise audiences and become classics in their own right. Spider-Man 2, Enter the Matrix, Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official video game of the movie, to name a few. But there's one that I feel never really got the love it truly deserved. I am, of course, talking about The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. Whenever people talk about Lord of the Rings games, it's inevitable that someone will start ranting and raving that Return of the King was amazing, Return of the King was so underrated, Return of the King needs a remake, blah de blah de blah blah blah. Now I'm too much of a Faramir to disagree with that, but I think if there's one Lord of the Rings game that truly deserves to be reforged in fire, it's Stormfront Studios' 2002 adaptation of The Two Towers. A game that actually should be called The Two Towers plus like 45% of the Fellowship of the Ring. But what makes The Two Towers worthy of such high praise? Most notably, this game is rough. Not in the Cyberpunk 2077 kind of way. I mean the brutal kind of rough. Not only is the game surprisingly challenging for a tie-in, there's something gritty and impactful about the combat that the future critically adored Return of the King just lost out on. Whether you're inhabiting the sweaty, worn-down boots of either Aragorn, Legolas, or Gimli, every swing of your sword feels meaty. And that's in no small part thanks to the vicious sound design. Breaking an enemy's shield or finishing a combo attack gave me such a power trip, and to this day I haven't found a game that makes me feel as cool as this did. If I had to compare it to a modern title, I'd say there's an air of Dark Souls about it, except this time I'm the one unfairly ruining all the orcs' lives. The impactful combat is bolstered by the breathtaking character designs. If I was forced to describe what made the Lord of the Rings films the cultural icons that they are, for me, it'd be the orc and Uruk-hai designs. So it would be downright sinful for any Middle-earth based project to not absolutely nail these disgusting beauties. And that goes for the environmental design too. Luckily, The Two Towers realizes every location with a level of care and detail that would make Denethor proud.
My son.
Considering the game features practically every location from that film, as well as several from the Fellowship of the Ring film, it's nothing short of remarkable that Stormfront perfectly encapsulated the tone and nuances of each individual area, Balin's Tomb and Fangorn Forest being my personal favourites. On the topic of Fangorn, as a kid, I used to fucking hate this level. Between the random orc ambushes, numerous cave troll encounters, and this goddamn berserker, it's no wonder child me dreaded this level every time I started a playthrough. But with the power of hindsight, plus the mental and physical skills I've now honed playing the Dark Souls games, on a modern run-through, I realised I didn't hate this level because it was bad. I hated it because it was fucking scary. The slow pacing and thick, heavy atmosphere gave it the same vibe as a horror game. Take away Gimli's axe and give him a gun, and they could have slapped Resident Evil on the cover and no one would have questioned it. Seamlessly segueing away from my point about axes, the gameplay, while repetitive, especially towards the end, never fails to live up to the standard set by the design. It would have been easy for the Two Towers to simply throw its arms up in the air and resign itself to being nothing more than a one-note beat-em-up. But through its use of upgradable skills, you're always incentivized to change up your combat style to earn greater rewards at the end of the level, which unknowingly ensures that the player is required to consistently hone all of their skills. It's a great way of tricking me into feeling like I'm improving as I progress, even when I'm not. In a similar fashion to fighting games, take something like Tekken for example, the moveset is easy to learn, but hard to master. The options in combat consist of a basic light and heavy attack, a simple block function, and long-range projectiles in the form of a bow and arrow, or Gimli's previously mentioned throwing axes, all of which is pretty self-explanatory. The difficulty comes from learning how these different abilities can combine together, and with the exception of Gimli's aforementioned sluggish throwing axes, the flow between the melee and ranged combat complement each other excellently by always making sure you don't stick to the same playstyle too long. Even smaller details like the harsh music stings that signal an enemy ambush harken back to that rough, aggressive style of gameplay I mentioned up top of the video. I still relive my childhood trauma every single time I hear it. As well as nuance in the music and sound design, Stormfront also managed to wrangle getting some of the film's actors into the studio to record new lines of dialogue specifically for this game. It's little extra touches of effort like that that make the Two Towers feel like a fully fledged game instead of feeling thrown together and flung out to the unsuspecting public. And all of this culminates in the finest video game version of the Battle for Helm's Deep ever put onto code. Except for the one in the LEGO Lord of the Rings, of course. I know it seems like I'm praising the ever-loving shit out of this game, but unsurprisingly, for a PS2 game made in 2002, which obviously is being amped up in no small part because of my nostalgia for it, there are still some issues that even I simply can't push aside. Stun-locking the tougher troll enemies, the piss-poor dodging mechanic, and the obviously cut content in the form of this Gandalf NPC that has its own unique animations and attack patterns are very indicative of the early 2000s era of gaming, and still to this day with some all too often serial offenders. That said though, I am still happy to accept these issues as the product of a short turnaround time for the developers, and in all fairness, none of them were so frustrating to the point that they tainted my overall adventure. That's honestly really all I have to say about the Two Towers video game adaptation. It's an incredibly solid, yet linear journey through the key battles from the film, but it never needed to be anything more than that. The strong focus on fierce gameplay, mixed with the attention to smaller details and a passionate soundscape, is more than enough to construct a memorable experience that has stuck with me for the better part of 20 years. If video game publishers now put this much sheer effort into their movie tie-ins, I would happily buy and play a Minions Rise of Gru game. He jokes, knowing full well they'll definitely make a bloody Minions Rise of Gru game. Back in that era, it felt like these movie-licensed Lord of the Rings adaptations were actually trying to do something bold and new with the IP. Between this, the Fellowship of the Ring tie-in game, and the Third Age, I think a Return of the King remake is way down at the bottom of my list. Hell, even a Battle for Middle-earth remake would have me salivating at the mouth more than a big dose of second breakfast. Thanks for checking out the video, guys. Have you played the Two Towers video game? What do you think of it? What's your favourite Lord of the Rings game? If there's call for it, maybe I'll relook at some of them as well. But please do let us know any and all of your thoughts down in the comments, and if you did want to support the channel even more than you already have, please do feel free to leave a like or even subscribe for more videos like this. Plus, if you wanted to financially support new content, the link to our Patreon is in the description. We appreciate all of your support in whatever form it takes. Thanks again for watching, and cheers.